Are we live? All right, there we go. We are live. This is Terrell Harris. Theology Thursday, 18 out of 5. So, good news. Wait, I think we're on Periscope. Let me see if we're on Periscope. Let me know what's happening.
I just got a notice.
Did you? Okay, good. Forgive me as I set this Periscope up. There we go. All right, so we're on Periscope. Let me tilt down a little bit. So as I fix this Periscope thing, some good news to let you guys know about those of you who are watching live and those of you who are watching the replay. The Open Box is officially registered as a church. I went up to Baltimore, Maryland on Tuesday, I believe, to register us as a church. So we are an official church with 0 official members. So I wanted to say this in the beginning, just in case you're watching this now, you may not make it all the way through. We need help in terms of planning the church. We're actually looking to plan potentially sometime next year, maybe next September or next October. So be on the lookout. We're going to be sending out meeting invites in terms of gathering folks to help us launch, help get us to that particular point. So we're super excited. We're doing things and we're starting to grow. We're starting to, create this movement outside of just the Theology Thursday bubble. So, oh yeah, let me turn this down a little bit. This?
It's long ways.
Oh, yes, the way I want it. All right, so let's get into Theology Thursday 18. Theology Thursday 18 is entitled The Other Commandments. So a lot of times when we think about commandments, we actually think about the 10 Commandments, and we don't actually realize that God has given us other commandments besides that. So one of the things I wanted to look at, I wanted to do some research and actually see what the first commandment God gave was. So we turned to Genesis, which typically I like to get into the Genesis stories because outside of it just being the beginning, once I learned some things about Genesis, it kind of reshaped my thinking in terms of what Genesis actually is and what it means. So the verse we want to look at today is Genesis chapter 1, verse 28. And it says, God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. So to set up some of the backstory, this is how we're going to be looking at Genesis today. Oftentimes we're taught, or at least I was taught prior to going to seminary, that Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 is one seamless story. But when I got into seminary, the professors let us know that if you look at it closely, it's actually 2 separate creation accounts. So for those of us, or those of you who may question that, you could actually look at the way in which God created the earth in Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 is a little bit different. So you'll see in Genesis 1, it's like the earth, vegetation, animals, and then humanity. And then in Genesis 2, you'll see that it's the earth, vegetation, Adam, the male, then humanity, and then Eve. So you see the actual creation story is a little bit different. So we're going to focus in on Genesis 1 as its own story. And as where we pick up in this instance is where, in Genesis chapter 126, God creates humanity in God's image. So to give you some of the backstory like I already did, what you'll see is in this kind of a pairing in terms of some of the stuff that's going on. And you'll see like day 3 is kind of paired with day 6. Like it talks about vegetation and it talks about the beast. And I think the idea is when you see some of the pairing up, you'll see that the animals and even humankind was meant to kind of feast on the vegetation. And then what you also see in chapter 1 is that God is actually delegating things to happen. So for instance, in verse 11, the Bible says, then God said, let earth put forth vegetation, plants yielding seed and fruit, trees of every kind on earth that bear fruit with the seed in it. I don't have my glasses, so sorry about that. And it was so. So you'll see that what's happening here is that God is actually, hey, Joanna, you'll see here that, you'll see that God is actually giving vegetation authority to produce more vegetation. So that's kind of the background. Just to catch you up, we're talking about Genesis chapter 1 verses 28, where it talks about be fruitful and multiply. So one of the things I said is we're going to look at this particular chapter as one creation story, because if you take a look at chapter 1 and chapter 2, you see slight differences in terms of the order of creation. So what they taught us in seminary anyway is that there's potentially two creation stories depending on how you look at it. So what we're going to do is look at Genesis 1 in its own particular context, not necessarily the Adam and Eve part.
Okay.
So I'll read the verse again, since you just stepped in, and it says, God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have domain over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the air and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. So the question I have for the group is, what are your thoughts about this passage and what actually comes to mind when you hear
it? Having babies.
Having babies.
Fruitful and multiply. That is where, that is what most often when people discuss, once a couple gets married and that's what happens next, they're fruitful and multiply and have children. So initially, that is one of my first thoughts.
My first thought is a question. Are we really the dominant species?
That's a good question. Hello.
Hi.
Feel free to join us. You can sit here. So just to catch everybody up, I'm going to catch Periscope up too for the people that join. We're talking about Genesis 1, and we're talking about verse 28, where it talks about be fruitful and multiply. So, actually, my name is Terrell. Sorry. Nice to meet you.
I'm sorry, I'm Joanna. That's Joe.
And what was your name?
Shanika.
Shanika? Okay, nice to meet you, Shanika. Thank you for joining us. So we're talking about be fruitful and multiply, and the question I posed to the group is, in terms of your teaching or being raised, what are your ideas around that particular verse? So Joe mentioned babies. So it's usually taught that we're supposed to have babies.
There was Genesis 1, chapter
1,
Chapter 1, verse 24.
24.
Brooke, you got anything? What comes to mind?
Wait, do you hear that?
Yeah. I don't hear it echo, no.
Okay. Yeah, I think I can agree that with Joe, I think I've been taught about the fruitful and multiply means to have children. But I know in real life, not everybody has children, not everybody wants children, and not everybody is able to have children. So maybe it's for humanity to be fruitful and multiply, yes, we have done that as humanity, but does that mean it has to be individually? Not necessarily, but I also like Joanna's question about, who, if I remember her question correctly, who is the one who is multiplying? Like, does it have to be humans?
Yeah. Anybody else? So.
And there's this other, I'm looking at passage, at verse 25, and it said, and God made the beast of the earth after his kind. And I guess I'm looking at it in the context of my question. Well, if we are to have human beings are to be dominant over all of the other creatures, but yet the beasts of the earth are after his kind as well.
Good point.
Am I just picking and choosing? Or?
No, we're gonna get to the dominion part. That's
Okay.
that's the third section we're gonna focus on. So that's actually good that you raised that question.
So the amplified version of that same verse, because I had a similar thought, I'm like, wait, hold on. And I just switched versions, but it says, and God made the wild beasts of the earth according to their kinds. So, like, not necessarily, is that what you were asking? Like,
Yeah.
And domestic animals according to their kinds, and everything that creeps upon the earth according to its kind. And God saw that it was good, fitting, pleasant, and he approved it.
So it's kind of like he had a blueprint for the wild, another blueprint for the tame, another blueprint. I'm just thinking, tying it up with biology. That's the way my mind works sometimes.
No, but we'll get into the idea of dominion and how that actually works. Any more ideas about the fruitful part, the multiplying?
That's what we were supposed to be on, huh? 24?
Yeah. All right. So here's the question I have. And I think I thought Brooke may have been leading into this, maybe not, but can you or how can you bring forth life without having a child? Don't cheat.
I was reading
Okay.
that part. I can't see all that.
Yeah. Can you bring forth life without a child?
So is the question, how can you or can you?
Both. If you can,
You have
how?
to answer. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll jump in and say yes. I believe that you can bring forth life without birthing a child or being responsible for the birth of a child.
Okay. Part B, how so?
I think that we can give life to different things through different ways. So it could be through a mentorship thing or taking responsibility. Well, that's still very similar to mentorship. The way that we speak to other people can create life. The things we do for other people can create life or destroy it. Yeah, those are a couple.
Anybody else?
I agree with that. Because, I mean, I think when you talk about your spiritual duties and responsibilities, meeting those spiritual responsibilities and duties.
Mm-hmm.
And in many cases, the women or men, sorry, the people that take care of our youth and bring them up may not be the birth parents.
Excellent points. Brooke, do you have anything?
What they said.
What they said.
And plus, when you think about it, I mean, not everybody, not only may not have the desire, but may be incapable of having children. Are they any less God's children for not having that ability?
Actually, that's a great point. That's a great point. Especially when you look at some of the Old Testament texts to where some of the females were considered barren and the struggle they had with not being able to produce, especially a male child. I think if we actually look at that in our context, now I can't speak for a female, of course, but I think I've known some individuals who have struggled with the idea of not being able to have a child and how I guess it wears on them heavy because they feel that they want to produce or they have a desire to produce. So I think you raise a good point about in terms of being fruitful and multiplying peace in this text. Well, it's twofold. Sometimes I think we are taught so strategically and from a literal sense to have babies and kind of help the world grow, but I think we could actually look outside of that and look at it as different things. Like you said, care for somebody else's child. Some of the other examples I have are helping somebody that's in need. So I tend to I try to look at some of this stuff on the literal side, and then I also try to look at it from like a parable standpoint or a metaphor standpoint. So when I hear the command to be fruitful and multiply in my context, well, of course, I'm not going to be able to birth a child myself, but I'm trying to figure out what does that mean for me outside of children, and Another thing that happens, is, especially in what we're trying to do with the open box in terms of expand and reach people, we can actually bring forth life by pouring energy into those situations, whether it's words of encouragement, whether it's praying for somebody, whether it's writing a note to somebody, or just for generally just for caring people in need. So that's just where my mind goes with it. Does that make sense? So one of my friends on Facebook, he's into um, like wildlife and trees and all that stuff like that. So one of the examples he gave, his name is William Nesbitt. I'm gonna give him a shout out. Shout out to you, Will. He said planting a tree can bring forth life, and he said if planted in the right place and with the right conditions, that life will last until uh, perpetuity as seeds grow and fall into new trees. So basically what he's saying is if the tree is planted in the right place, it'll germinate and then it'll produce more seeds or more trees or more shrubbery. So you have this tree multiplying in a sense that it's actually following the first commandment of God of being fruitful and multiply. And if we are caretakers of wildlife in terms of planting a tree, we can actually help plant or help. We can actually help wildlife actually grow.
Yeah, but then that wildlife actually helps back.
Say that again, Brooke.
I said then that wildlife actually helps us back. It helps the animals back.
Yeah, exactly.
Life. So yeah, it's like full circle.
Yeah, so it's a pattern. So it's not just that the tree is there for itself, producing more trees and more plants. It in turn helps us with life, whether it's producing clean air, whether it's producing food. What else do trees do?
Keep the soil from eroding.
Exactly. Yeah.
I have a question. Is it possible that this could be a metaphor for Christianity? I mean, is that something that's ever been
I think so.
discussed?
I actually think so.
How so?
Well, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. You take the seed of Christianity and basically you nourish it within yourself and you spread it as much as you can to others who will in turn spread it as well. As far as the replenish the earth part, okay, that's a stretch. But I just was thinking just that it would have dominion over all the other creatures of the earth. That would be something that Christianity, no, as I'm talking, I don't like what I just said. So
No, I actually think it makes sense because what I was gonna say is in terms of planting a church, they always use the metaphor in terms of church plant. I think it kind of lines up because basically what's happening as we, look to plant a church is I've taken everything I'm learning and trying to pass it to everybody I potentially can, whether it's a small group, whether it's a larger group, and in turn, at least what I expect to happen is whether or not you journey on the same path as me to pastoral leadership or just leadership in your own context in terms of what you do, it really just creates a regeneration process and it does expand Christianity or the kingdom of God. So I think what you said is actually on point.
Yeah, but I think it's dangerous though.
By itself.
Well, because it's kind of like I don't know where you're gonna go with your point about dominion,
Yeah.
but it's well, let me say this. Historically, Christianity, while the heart of it is amazing, how it has manifested in many contexts has been damaging. So when you say dominion and you spread it like that, how historically how it has been spread has in many cases killed people, has in
Yeah.
many cases impacted people, like stripped people of their culture and their own spirituality. So I think it's the dominion piece of that, you have to be careful with that. But
yeah,
like I said, the heart of it is awesome. And I think when we can spread it and be fruitful and multiply in a way that brings forth life and love, then it is a good thing.
Okay. Now I'm glad you just remember what you just said about dominion, because when we get to there's one or two more things we're going to talk about before we talk about dominion, but just remember what you said, because the dominions is going to be a little bit different.
Okay.
Did you have anything? Like you wanted to say something?
I do.
Okay,
I
go ahead.
finally found the scripture I was looking for.
Good Lord. Sorry, Periscope. Keep falling. Go ahead. I think. Well,
Brooke's not here to hold the camera.
you got it.
You can hold it, Joe.
Periscope went out. I don't think there was anybody on anyway.
Oh, I was just gonna. I'm kind of all over the place here, but I was gonna
That's
read
fine.
in John, chapter 3, and everybody knows the story about Nicodemus coming to Jesus and saying, Rabbi, we know you're a teacher come from God, for no one can do these signs that you do unless God is with him. And Jesus says, unless you're born again, you can't see the kingdom of God. And then Nicodemus is like, wait a minute, how can a man be born when he's old? Can he enter a second time into his mother's womb and be born? And Jesus answered, truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born of water and the Spirit, he cannot enter the kingdom of God. And the tradition that I was a part of when I was younger, that was like a central tenet, baptism, having your new life in Christ. And so they would say that as you bring people to Christ and they get baptized and they're born again, multiplication,
Yeah.
spiritual multiplication go along with that, depending on what religious tradition that you're coming from. Mine, it was all about baptism. Then I know other people that, speaking in tongues and different things like that, different things that show that you have the Spirit. But everybody agreed that once you turned over your life to Christ, the old was gone and you were dead to that, and the new had come and you were reborn and you were a new creation. And so when I read this in Genesis, it makes me think about Nicodemus' question.
Yep. Actually, excellent point. Excellent connection. All right. So the next portion of the actual verse that I want to talk about is the subdue part. So what do you, in terms of your tradition or how you've been taught as a child or even as an adult, what have you been taught that subdue means in this particular context? So it says, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Is subdue something that's positive? Is it negative? Or have you been taught that it's positive? Have you been taught that it's negative?
All my associations with it are pretty negative.
Okay. Negative in what way?
Well, subdue to me conveys conquering,
Okay.
and in turn subjugating.
Gotcha.
It makes me think about the passage in Ephesians, wives and husbands.
Submit
Yep.
yourselves to one to another.
Submitting yourselves one to another. A lot of women have a hard time with the first part of that, because it's like, wives, submit to your husbands. Paul leads talking about women and what we ought to be doing.
As often Paul does.
That's probably another conversation for another day. But he also says later on that in the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies, and he grounds it all in love. So, I agree with you. The connotation for subduing has been negative in my experience. People have used verses like that to justify all sorts of atrocities against people, specifically people of color, brown, black, yellow, any other color but white. And so, like your wife said, when the heart of love isn't there, it can become a very dark and oppressive thing indeed. I don't think that God meant it that way. I don't think he meant it to end up becoming our, like, to destroy all of us and the planet.
Okay. Any other ideas?
Well, when I think of subdue, I think of control, and I think that kind of where you were is that control can be taken in two different ways, right? You can control something, meaning, in a very negative sense, or you can have control of something. You can have control of what you're able to.
It's more akin to like responsibility,
Yeah.
accountability.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
do one's emotions.
Yeah. Yes.
Brooke, you have anything else to do?
No, I think it just comes with like a masculine kind of energy, to it, and a masculine kind of bordering on what's the word, aggressive a little bit, but I think it can be negative depending. So I don't have one way or the other about it. I think that word just kind of falls into that category for me, but it doesn't have to be a negative thing.
Okay. All right. So here's some things I want to raise in terms of like looking at the scripture in its context. So at this point, it's like I said, God created the earth, vegetation, animals, the beasts, humankind, and then He's given this commandment. So at this particular point in the story of creation, I don't think there's anything negative in terms of what's happening on the earth. So there's no sense of sin. There's no sense of, I guess, the devil at this time, because it's like a, I don't think the world is perfect per se in this instance. It's more like what they call good. So I think because we have the idea of what subdue is, we kind of often read negativity into the context or the text. But in doing the research in terms of looking at the actual Hebrew word, it's more related to bringing the land under cultivation. So it's like subduing the wilderness. So like if there were trees and vegetation, what's happening here is God is commanding humankind to get things in control. So the interesting thing about that is God has actually given humanity authority to kind of shape and form what's happening in the earth. Because let's be real, at this time, if humanity's there, it's still avoiding it. So it's probably animals and things like that, depending on how you view creation and the things that happen around that. So you have animals, you have vegetation, but it's real. Everything's still really new. And at this point, if you look at it as God giving, the animals and humanity, or male and female authority, God's not going to do the rest of the work. So He's like, here, you're here. Here's your task. Cultivate, subdue the wilderness, because it's, and we see that in today's context when you see buildings being built, and then you'll see trees coming down and everything like that, in terms of expansion. So
It's basically like permission to cultivate, have agriculture, farm, like all that.
exactly. So one quote I have from a commentary says, more generally, subduing involves development in the creative order. The process offers to the human being the task of intra-creational development and bringing of the world along to its fullest possible creation potential. Here, paradise is not in a state of perfection, not a static state of affairs. Humans live in a highly dynamic situation. The future remains open to a number of possibilities in which creaturely activity will prove crucial for the development of the world. So again, we tend to think of this subdue portion as something negative, but in this particular content, since I guess negativity wasn't actually introduced into the world yet, it was more of a positive thing of getting things in order.
So negativity wasn't yet introduced, and we're gonna have to shut this part down because I'm way in left field right now.
That's fine.
Would we need to necessarily control the animals, because the way that we know animals to act in the wild
Yeah.
is typically negative.
Yeah.
But we haven't had the fall yet. So were the animals chill? Like, were they just, reliant?
Animals, they would still kill you.
But know what I mean? Like, what
That's all.
do we think the nature of animals changed after the fall?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I wouldn't think so because I mean, you still had predators, you still had omnivores, you still had carnivores.
So there was an order.
So this is where it gets tough, right? I don't discount science at all. That's just my standpoint. So when you look at dinosaurs, which are animals, you understand that some dinosaurs probably were meat eaters and stuff like that. So it's kind of hard to say whether or
I
not.
don't know the answer.
Yeah.
Like,
So
I was in love to be honest.
I think that's a question that you could pose, but whether or not we actually have an answer for that, it may be difficult to try to assess. You good? Oh, I see wheels turning. I see wheels turning.
I was just thinking, well, it's interesting you said before the fall because I'm wondering, okay, yeah, you had these carnivores and these omnivores, but if they recognize man as being dominant, maybe they knew not to, well, they knew to leave him or and her alone. And it wasn't until the fall of Eve that, God was like, okay, you're on your own. No?
We don't. The tough thing about this paradise part in terms of the creation and what happens, we don't really get too many details. And then even looking at the very beginning in terms of how the writers actually heard the story and kind of wrote it down. Like if you look at it, I don't have the actual diagram now, but they actually believe the universe revolved around the Earth and that there was a dome around the Earth and stuff like that. So it wasn't even necessarily at this point. I don't even think they understood humans didn't fully understand that the Earth wasn't flat. So when I can send out the diagrams to a group, but it's like a tiered diagram to where it's like Earth. I think Sheol on the bottom, and then it's like a dome, and then I think above the dome is heaven. So the idea of the universe and everything wasn't necessarily even formed yet. So what becomes challenging is when we look at these particular texts, and then we have a course of history in terms of science, developing things and kind of finding things, and then it's kind of hard to weave those things back in. I mean, because we know about the solar system, we know about planets, we know about the universe, but in terms of Genesis doesn't get into those details. So we don't necessarily have all of the answers for that. That makes sense? So the next part I wanted to talk about, which is that came up a few times, is the dominion part. So what do you guys, I think it kind of came up in our discussion a little bit. So what do you guys actually think dominion means, and what have you been taught that dominion means in this text?
Power.
Is it power, control? Anything else? So how does that pertain to us or our relationships with the animals?
Well, if it means I'm going to land a lion's den, that ain't what it is.
It means what?
But if it means that I'm supposed to be able to just go land the lion's den, nope, not doing that. I've always struggled with this.
Okay. Why?
Well, because we do have this dominion, supposedly this control, but we also have to be real and say that there are just animals that can and will overpower humans.
Yes.
And that no matter how much faith I have, if I'm camping and a bear is chasing me, I'm not going to look at that bear and say, in the name of Jesus, stop. Like, it's just, and maybe I don't have enough faith, and we can talk about that. But, like, I mean, I say it in a joking manner, but, like, that is something that I have to, what does that dominion actually mean?
Okay. So no getting bit by snakes or anything like that?
No, don't let snakes go in church. Nope.
Keep the box closed on that one. Yeah, keep the box closed on the snakes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess, I don't know. Looking at it again, just from a biological point of view, it's like man is the quote dominant species, but it's not because of our it's based on our intellect. It's based on our ability to create. It's based on our ability to maneuver. And I guess those are tools just as much as, claws and teeth
Yeah.
and being able to move fast.
Anybody else?
I guess looking at it and reading on a little bit, to me, and this may sound silly, but it almost sounds like God's trying to set up the food chain, like so that we'll, know what we're supposed to be eating. And I'm not going to get into food politics at all, and veganism or not, and all
That actually might be the next one, or maybe part 2 or 3.
Part 2 or 3. Okay.
Maybe one of those. I'm still debating whether or not we're gonna get into that.
I won't go into that here, but I just like how God's like, behold, I've given you every plant yielding seed on the face of the earth, and every tree. You should have them for food.
Yeah.
And then for the beasts and stuff, He's given them green plants for food.
Yep.
So to me, it's like sort of, because at this point, humans haven't been, this is the first sort of like the overview, and then we get to the detailed creation account of like human beings, where He creates man and woman. So it's sort of like, okay, you can grow stuff and you can eat stuff.
Yeah.
To me, that's sort of what I come away from with. And then you're responsible for whatever you eat. Don't take all of it. Take what you need. To me, when I read Dominion, the DOM part of it, to me, is the same root as like domineering, dominate. Bringing back my Latin, but I don't want to read my modern day definition into it.
Well, I mean,
I don't think it. Go ahead.
I was gonna say that's fine that you do, because I mean, we have our particular context in which we know from, and oftentimes, it's not to say that it's wrong. It's just how we understand the text. But sometimes we have to look at the actual Greek and Hebrew, and then sometimes you'll get like a total different definition. But just because of the way it was translated and passed down to us, we have a built theology that's already established. So
my vote is food chain.
Food chain? All right. So what I found in my research is, now I may be jacking this up for anybody who's watching who's a Hebrew scholar. The word is pronounced Rada or Radah, and the term is, in terms of dominion, the term reveals that the term must be understood in the terms of caregiving and nurturing, so not exploitation. So in terms of dominion, it's more meant to mean caregiver. So we were supposed to care for the animals. So it's not necessarily saying like, beat, whip, and do anything like that. It's sort of like, I don't even necessarily want to compare it to having a dog, because I think there's a disciplinary actions in there at certain aspects if you want to get the animals to listen. But from this particular perspective, or in terms of the Hebrew language, the idea is that we were supposed to be caretakers of the earth, so not just the vegetation, not just the harvest and the wilderness, but also the animals. So
like a shepherd?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like shepherd. It's actually an excellent comparison and visualization. Does that make sense? That makes sense, Brooke?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So the thing that gets tough about some of what we read in the Bible is like when you really dig into the context, the history, genealogies, if you dig into the language, sometimes meanings can actually change everything. I mean, because even, prior to, whatever schooling I had, I actually thought, some of the same things like dominion is control, subdue is control. So you see all this negativity, but I think it's actually, you can actually view it as something that's a little bit more positive, a positive message that God has given us. So based on everything we just discussed, I took the liberty of rewriting this particular verse or remixing it, right? So One thing I also wanted to point out too is I think I kind of glazed over it. The first thing God did to humanity was after God created it was bless them. So it says God blessed humanity, and then God said to them. So we don't know what that blessing is, but I can only assume or read into this particular verse that since creation was happening, God blessed man and women with the ability to create. Now, of course, we can't create the same things that God creates, but in a smaller context, we do create stuff. Whether it's today, you have technology, you have air, just every. I think we have the ability to create, and that was to me one of the original blessings that God gave us, from the start. So in my remix, maybe I'll remix the whole Bible one day. Maybe not. So this is the Terrell, right? This is the Terrell Standard Version. TSV, Terrell Standard Version. So this is what I came up with. Be successful in the continuous process of bringing forth life. Fill the earth with life and cultivate the wilderness. Be a caretaker to every living thing on the planet. And then in terms of continuing this process, we have to continue to teach this message. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Everybody's just kind of nodding their head.
Well, because I'm processing.
Okay. You want me to read it again?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So again, Terrell Standard Version. Be successful in the continuous process of bringing forth life. Fill the earth with that life and cultivate the wilderness. Be a caretaker to every living thing on the planet. TSV.
Bring forth life.
Be successful.
Fill the earth with the life. And
be a caretaker to every living thing. So it's be successful in the continuous process of bringing forth life.
I like it.
So, the closing points that I want to address with this, in terms of it actually being a commandment, is it almost appears that success is not optional. So it's like God is saying, be successful, point blank, period. So in terms of God blessing them and saying to them, be fruitful and multiply, there's no option outside of that. So if it's a commandment to humanity, it's be fruitful and multiply. So it's like there's no option to fail. So like if the commandment is, like if we look at the 10 commandments, and one of the commandments is don't commit adultery, or thou shalt not kill, it's clear, like don't kill. So in terms of being fruitful and multiply and bringing forth life, the commandment is to be successful in doing that. Which is why it's kind of difficult to look at this as only baby making.
Yeah.
At least for our context. Maybe in their context, if they were trying to fill the earth at this time, or at least that's how the writers are portraying the story. But in our context, especially for individuals who have had kids or can't have kids, there's still a way to be fruitful and multiply. Does that make sense? Is that a tough one?
I think I have problems. Well, speaking in the context of, recovering alcohol.
Yes.
I have problems with the word recapitulate.
Okay.
So when you say you have no choice but to be successful, I'm very uncomfortable because a lot of the mentality in my recovery is progress, not perfection. So as long as you're continuously struggling and continuously focused on this particular goal, that in and of itself is successful.
Yeah.
Some days you may be short, but that doesn't mean that because you drank today, you're giving up on the overall goal.
Yeah.
So does that make
No, it makes sense, and I think that's why I was a little bit purposeful in terms of the continuous process. So it's not that like it's a one and done thing, but it's an overall process of life. And we're not. I don't think we're always going to produce quote unquote lifelike situations. But the idea is to at least be on that path at a certain point. And for individuals who may not be able to produce life, I think for us who are a little bit more um, in a position to give life, I think we have to be aware of what we do and the blessings that we have to push out. So, like, even when we went out last week or the week before last to serve the homeless, so some of those individuals may not be in a position or in the mindset to give life, or if you want to call it producing. So I think we as leaders and we as individuals who are in that position can pour into those individuals, and then hopefully something we do may inspire those individuals to, give in their certain way or produce quote unquote life in their context as they see fit.
I struggled with the TSB
It's, okay.
interpretation because I too am a perfectionist. But then I realized that two things.
Mhm.
After hearing that, I was like, gosh, God really trusts us
Yeah.
a lot, like, and then that makes me feel like, oh gosh, he believes in me, he thinks I can do it. And then also, the command to be successful came after the blessing. So it's like, okay, a little nervous about the whole be successful part, but I have the blessing, so I have something like A, I don't have to do it by myself,
Mhm.
and B, I was empowered to be able to do this
Yep.
before I even was aware that this is what God wanted me to do.
Mhm.
So that helps my inner perfectionist relax a little bit.
Good point. Good point. Anybody else?
I have a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
um, I think it's, how do I say?
Talk
I think
Talk a little bit louder.
can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Um, when we're talking about the command to be fruitful and multiply, or TSV's version, it doesn't matter. Um, one of the things that strikes me is that it's really a commandment to humanity,
Yeah.
not necessarily a commandment. It is and it is not a commandment in my mind to the individual.
Good point.
And I say that because I too struggle with perfectionism. um, but I also understand that I'm a part of something larger. I'm a part of a connectedness to people, and we as human beings are charged. Are you still there? Okay, I think it's freezing. Are you still? Can you hear me? Uh-oh. Are you there? Are you there? Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it just froze. um, yeah, so part of it for me is that it's something that human beings are charged to do. And I think when it comes to multiplying the earth, if we take it from the literal sense, we've done that, you know. And that might be kind of going into your thing about success, but also recognizing that all of us come with our own definitions of what success is.
Exactly.
And we didn't actually define that, but we come with these inner stories about success that can open us up to that, or have us retreat a little bit from that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just kind of what I was thinking about. But I also thought, how do we do this better? Like, how do we be fruitful and multiply better? How do we give life better? How do we be successful better? That didn't make sense, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I didn't say I had anything. I was just throwing that out there.
So I guess to answer your question in terms of how do we do this better, the thing that's tough about humanity and stuff like that, especially in dealing with beliefs, religious beliefs tend to separate us. So, even if we take the stance of we're going to interact with humanity better, just our small group, that doesn't necessarily mean humanity is going to interact or play nice with us. So it's tough because until we're all at a place to where we could get in a realm of peace, even with peace with individuals we don't necessarily have the same beliefs with, it's going to be tough to be. I wouldn't say it's going to be tough to be successful, but humanity as a whole being successful, I think it'll be tough. I mean, because when you pose a question and say that's a charge to humanity, I don't think we necessarily get it. I mean, if you think about poverty in DC, you think about poverty in the United States, but if you actually think about global poverty, I mean, I think they say, what is it like?
A lot.
Something no, but even like the richest people.
2/3 of the world lives on less than $1 a day.
Yeah,
Those
like
types
that's
of statistics,
insane. And even if you think like the richest people, the top 3% or 5% richest people in America are more wealthy than the 97%. That's insane. But then if we speak about fairness in terms of resources, then you get called a socialist. If there's something actually wrong with everybody having an equal share, but yeah, that's just my first or my random impressions of that. But I don't think that should discourage us from trying to create a realm of peace, understanding, and giving life to whoever we could actually touch.
Because regardless of the world accepting the sharing of the life that we are offering, we still have the commandment to be fruitful and multiply and produce life. So we still have to, and it could be one of those things where, the quote is like, whoever changes the world, whatever, the people that believe that they can do something. And even though we could be looking at this and saying like, well, we could be simple as smiling in the morning on the train.
Yeah.
No one else smiles in the morning on the train. Why should I? But you as one person could then have someone else smile, and it could be you could have a lasting effect that we can't, in my opinion, just not because everyone else, or not everyone, but others are not.
Yeah, and actually to piggyback on that, I think we probably can do this in another session, but in terms of breaking down what life is, because we did give some examples, but we often think of life as something huge and a daunting thing, especially with the idea of birth being behind life. But like you said, you can smile in terms of that can be a seed planted that grows and it can change somebody's day just from smiling or saying hello or saying how was your day. So it could be something. Life could be something small. I mean, if you think about life, it starts off as something small, just a combination of two cells. Right, so I think we probably shouldn't be overwhelmed with the task of actually bringing forth life, remembering that we can do little things to actually bring forth life, and they may take their own shape in a different form that we have no idea about. I'm sorry.
Kindness Coalition.
That's side story behind that.
But yeah, I think that's good to remember. It doesn't have to be big, but it has to be something. As long as you're attempting to do something. And life for Joanna might not look the same as life for Joe.
Yep. All right, that's all I have. Unless there's anybody else has anything, any questions, any concerns? Does it make sense? Clear as mud? Clear as water? Clear as mud? Somewhere in the middle? Murky water. Okay. So that was the first commandment. I think I might have fun with this because we oftentimes always look at run to the 10 commandments, but God and Jesus told us to do some other things that are important in terms of how we relate to each other, build community, and then also spread the good news. So that's it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else going on. Like we said in the beginning, we are registered as official church. So what does that mean? Not much yet because we have 0 members. We're not having service yet. So what we want you to do is get involved in terms of helping us plan and be strategic in terms of the next steps. We will be looking to have a worship experience started sometime in September, next October potentially. So we're in the process of forming our launch team. So email us at info@theopenbox if you are interested. Pray on it, see where God is leading you or what God is actually leading you to do. And that is it. And you can follow me on Twitter at Mr. Terrell Harris. You can follow Brooke at Landon Brooke. You can follow Joe at loco_Joko. Yeah, I got it right this time. And that is it. Peace and blessings. You guys have a good one.
Bye, y'all.
See you later, Brooke.
Bye.
Bye, Brooke.
Bye.